Yesterday, we said goodbye to the CLG Dream Run in spring, and Cloud9 were proven mortal once more. Who knows what today has in store? But I'm excited to find out. Alongside our analysts, Emily Rand, Mark Z, and Primal. I know the CLG Dream is dead, but Primal, I'm really hoping they didn't take you with it. How you doing over there, buddy?
I'm still recovering, but you know what? I have to do this every split, so at least I'm getting good at the recovery part.
Hey, yeah, you know, practice makes perfect, right? We're just trying to get you all geared up for what's to be expected in the future. But right now, at the top of the day, let's go ahead and turn to our Samsung SSD Fast 5 leaderboards because things will be a little different from here on out. All of our stats are updated for fastest average times. So players have a chance to keep climbing the leaderboards in spite of some changes in patch 11.4.
I think the thing that I'm going to point to is just Perks getting his mythic item the fastest in the league, or at least for the mid laners, and doing it by 2 minutes faster than anyone else. And I think a large part of that's because of the playmaking around mid lane. It's not just about farming for him. There's a lot of solo kills. There's a lot of 2v2s with Blabber.
Similarly, I think Neo being at the top for fastest 10k gold average is actually super impressive. He's someone who we did not highlight whatsoever coming into this split, and he's performed really well, and I also think Dignitas have used him really well.
Yeah, and continuing, you know, Dignitas people blowing up. Fake God looking really good, and surprised to see him here in fastest 100 CS. Normally, when we think the elite top laners in North America, we talk about Alphari, we talk about Someday, we talk about Impact. But Fake God, I don't know if he's at the absolute top tier, but lately he's been competitive with these guys, so it feels good to see him on that leaderboard.
Yeah, Dig putting in work, and Neo, a special thank you to you for getting your Penta and putting some extra points into my fantasy pocket so I can try and crush crumbs this week. But there's a bit for us to unpack after all that we saw go down on Saturday. So, Mark, go ahead and start us off. What went down between the match of Team Liquid and Cloud9?
Well, a whole bunch of things went down. It was a pretty back-and-forth game, which you want to see when you're talking about your probably best two teams in the league. C9 was actually in a pretty good position to win this game. It started with TL getting the first kill, but then afterwards there were a number of skirmishes in the bot lane that went in C9's favor. Nice hooks by Vulcan, and then they had three pretty hard-scaling champs in each of their carry positions. So from there, I thought they were going to win the game, but there was one Team Liquid player who was not having any of that.
Yeah, so let's talk about Alphari, because as you saw from that first team fight, he was really isolated from the team, and they were really, like, C9 was really easy to turn on him in that bot side tri-bush. What I liked to see from TL is as the game went on, they just started sending Alphari to side lanes where he had a major success in the 1v1s. I think leveraging his side laning prowess and just his dueling prowess. This is someone who is a phenomenal laner, someone who has that kind of energy where it's like, I will 1v1 you and win. He knows how to win these duels, and obviously, you know, parts of it were that he was just already a little bit ahead and in a good spot to be able to do this. But leveraging side lane pressure from Alphari is definitely something I really want to see TL continue to do, because the thing I've been the most critical on, actually, is the fact that they haven't necessarily leveraged a lot of advantages that Alphari has been able to get in the top lane and transform it into macro plays or gains elsewhere on the map.
Totally agree. And look, TL is technically behind C9 in the standings, but I am going to come out and just say I think TL is the favorite to win the mid-season showdown. I think they are the best team in North America right now, and I think they'll only continue to get stronger. Up to this point, they were by far the best early game team with almost 1,900 gold lead at 15. Next closest was C9 with almost 1K. And before, the issue was that they would get ahead and then they would throw, right? But just as Emily noted, now Alphari's advantages are actually turning into decisive game wins. And I think this is a trend that's going to continue. They're also 7-2 against Cloud9 right now. So maybe Cloud9's beating everyone else, but TL has their number. They're the best team in North America.
At the end of that game, and Captain Flowers deemed them the kryptonite for Cloud9, and I think that's a reasonable way to label them here. And we did see them perform in the lock-in tournament. We'll have to see what happens in the showdown. But speaking of the showdown, let's go ahead and take a look at our standings ahead of today's games, because Cloud9 are up at first, as always. They're followed by Dignitas, Team Liquid, and TSM in second. 100 Thieves and Evil Geniuses are tied in 5th, and Immortals are in 7th. with how neck and neck the top of our standings have been this spring, I want to get your thoughts on the seeding for our mid-season showdown. But for those that have not yet been in the know, our mid-season showdown is an updated version of spring playoffs. It's a standalone LCS title and involves a double elimination bracket, which means that the top 4 teams at the end of spring will be seeded into the upper bracket, and the teams in 5th and 6th will automatically land in the lower bracket. Of course, whoever reigns supreme in the mid-season showdown will be representing NA at MSI in May. And with standings in spring having real implications on who might clinch that shiny new title, let's take a look at your predictions for how our top 6 teams will stack up. Oh, all right. Looks like there's a lot of similarities for the top 3 here. Cloud9, Team Liquid, and TSM being at the top. I know, Primal, you mentioned believing that Team Liquid will be the ones to win it all, but here with the standings, still believe that they'll finish in that 2nd place.
Yeah, and that's just a math thing, right? At the end of the day, Cloud9 is ahead 2 wins right now. So even if TL wins all the remaining games, they're going to be 13-5, which is not quite enough to catch up with Cloud9 as long as Cloud9 keeps winning. But I want to talk about the lower half. I saw we pretty much agreed on 1 through 3, but 4 through 6 is a little bit different. The reason why I have 100 Thieves rated at 4, even though they're not playing super hot right now, is they actually have a pretty easy strength of schedule coming up. The teams that they have to play are Golden Guardians, Immortals, FlyQuest, and TL. I expect them to be favored against the first 3 of those and then to lose to TL. So overall, I think they're going to figure out their issues and be good enough to beat some of these lower ranked teams.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, I think that's the big question, is exactly how hard is 100 Thieves sliding right now, because they do have the easiest by a pretty substantial margin, whereas I think Dignitas and EG have pretty similar ones, and they even play each other. So like that's going to be a huge implication game for how that's going to shake out.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the main difference between all of us is we've each selected either EG, 100T, or Dignitas as our 4th team, and we're all different across the board. I do want to talk a little bit about Dignitas, because the reason why, despite the fact that they have a slightly more difficult schedule, and as Mark pointed out, a really important head-to-head matchup, I like what they've been doing, and I like what they've been doing since the beginning of the split, in that they really seem to know how this team wants to play. They leverage the fact that Dardoch does have a very large champion pool to be able to get really favorable picks for their solo lanes. I already highlighted Neo in the Fast 5 as someone who's just been performing super, super well. Aframu has already been highlighted several times on this desk as someone who's been a leader for this team. They seem to know like who they are, and they've been sticking with it even after losses. And I just really, really appreciate that. And I always think that a team that has a really good understanding of themselves and can draft around it, I tend to have a little bit more faith in them.
Yeah, I think, oops, sorry.
Nope, go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, Dignitas also has the advantage of being 1 game up from a lot of the teams that we're saying will end up in that bottom 3 position. For me, I put EG just because I think that they have the highest upside potential currently of a lot of those teams. I know when 100 Thieves is absolutely grooving, they also could be that way, but it just seems like they're further away from that than EG, where EG just still seems really inconsistent. And it's not even just Jizuki, I know that's who we talk a lot about, but like the 2 Mundo games out of Svenskeren were like night and day. And I still think that is a big concern, especially with a relatively tough strength of schedule. But I also think that they're the team that's most likely to take a lot of these other games off top teams. So that's why I'm sliding them in number 4. But it's a huge, huge advantage to actually be that 4th place team that we're all kind of debating who it's going to be.
That is the cutoff point, as you can see in that bracket for everyone watching. Being 5th and 6th seed does mean that you automatically go into the losers bracket. You don't have that second life opportunity. So all of these teams keeping that in mind when they're fighting through these final matches of the regular season. But while the mid-season conversation is interesting, of course, I personally want to look even further into the future. I'm asking each of you what you would like to place in our LCS time capsule from the present to be opened later on in summer. It could be a prediction, a hope, something that you know for certain, as long as we can reflect back on it when our season is over. Emily, what have you decided to include in the capsule?
So, as I was talking about in the mid-season showdown discussion, I have this snazzy Dignitas cap with a little note there that says they're 9-5 and tied in 2nd place. I think this is definitely not a team that any of us at the beginning or in preseason would have cited as a team that was, tied for 2nd place, vying for a top spot in LCS. Like I said, I really like how they've recognized who exactly is on this team and how to leverage their strengths to cover up opportunity areas on the team. I do think they need to work a little bit more on their mid-game macro specifically, but I really like the way they've been playing, and I want to remember, I want to cite that, you know, we were all wrong about Dignitas at the beginning of the split, and they're doing super well. And, you know, if world seeding happened right now, which is, you know, a very extra statement to say, they would be going to Worlds, so here we go. The Dignitas hat is going in.
Emily, what I want to know is this a prediction, a hope, or something that you know for certain?
It's not a prediction. I think
Okay.
for a team like that, again, like for a team like this, I want to see how they continue to improve together. And now it's like, okay, you have this really clear-cut team identity, in my opinion. Now focus on a lot of the stuff that needs work. Like I said, their mid-game macro, especially like cross-map trading, stuff like that.
Cool. And we have definitely not Mark Z over here.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know how you're trying to give serious answers here, Emily. You're like an idiot.
I was looking at the camera, not you, and now I'm looking at
I know, I'm focused on what
Amazing
Emily's
control.
saying here, Mark.
Such a professional. I'm putting Udyr. Udyr's permaban. What the hell is this? You know, when you really think about it, this is one of the oldest champs in the game, one of the simplest kits. You know, he's been pretty ignored for a long portion of the competitive scene, especially like the LCS stages. You know, and here he is just dominating the meta. And I don't think you'll see this for quite a while whenever the meta kind of shifts out and he drops back out of priority. So I want to celebrate the return of Udyr. I got a bear, a tiger, and a turtle. No Phoenix stance. Couldn't find that hat online. But yeah, I'm putting all three of these suckers in there.
That's like 3 animals in 1 Pokeball. That's kind of inhuman.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, or like in Persona, you fuse them all together to make a super strong.
What I want to know is how your hair stayed that straight afterward.
I put
Mine
so
would just
much
be all
shit
over
in my
the
hair.
place.
Like half the time, mine's getting caught back here. Mark, it's a level of perfection that
I
hope
put
to
cement in my hair. Is
Nice.
the secret.
I see.
Ah,
Yeah.
all right. Well,
Yeah. Can't relate.
Primal. Yeah, you know, all of us over here are just taking notes from Mark, but Primal, what you gonna be throwing into the capsule?
So I have the remainder of my CLG face sauce from the split. You can see it if I zoom in a little bit. There's a little bit left in there, okay? But I'm gonna retire the rest of this for spring, and I'm gonna send it forth to summer. Overall, look, I think it's a disappointing end of the, or not end of the split, but you know, to be knocked out of playoff contention like this. But overall, I do think the team has shown some good signs to build upon. Finn has looked really, really good top lane. I think Pobelter has had some pretty good carry performances on Victor. So I'm hoping that by the time I reopen my time capsule, CLG is going to make playoffs. So I'm sending my face sauce to the future.
I appreciate that everyone else is like in the Last Supper costume, and then there's just Broxa there in his CLG jersey.
Dude, Emily, you and I are on the same wavelength today. Everything you're saying is racing through my brain. Primal, how much of that did you have to drink to get those wins that we saw recently? Was it all the bottle?
Oh, man. Yeah, and my stomach has not been the same since. So almost all of it. You can see there's still a little bit at the end. But yeah, we had to do some serious damage.
Yeah, might want to get that checked up for yourself, Primal. We all care about you here. But let's go ahead and find out. What do you think that my thing is going to be thrown into the capsule? Guess what? I'm on the Blabber boat, baby. Call me a Blabber believer. He will be the one to lead Cloud9 to their international aspirations. And if you look at what happened to Cloud9 at the beginning of last year down to the end, that might be something that's difficult to hop on board with. But it's a different story this time around. Not only is Blabber at the top of his game compared to any time we've seen him before, they've added perks for some more of that versatility from the mid lane position. And while his teammates like Fudge have noted that they spend a lot of time on the Rift trying to wrangle him back from fighting everything that he sees, he has noted in an interview on his own that he is willing to service his team in any jungle meta.
Yeah, I mean, I think carry junglers in general are going to be a bit weaker. Starting from like this patch and maybe going forward, maybe you'll see less carry junglers and more like supportive type junglers. Like Skarner, for example, has come more into the meta, and I think it's probably just a transition that a lot of teams will have in the future. For me specifically, I'm happy to play in any meta, so I don't always have to be the carry for my team, right? I'm happy playing like Skarner as well and supporting my team.
What I want to know is how can Blabber be patch-proof if he's supposed to be an Olaf one-trick? Inquiring minds need to know.
I also think there's a really edgy take you could have gone with here, where like if you time capsuled Blabber from Summer and then saw C9's drop-off, you could have done it again here and predicted that they were going to have a horrible drop-off in Miss Worlds despite looking so great. You could have time capsuled it that way.
Oh, but I'm a Blabber believer, Mark. I ain't trying to go against them and what they've been bringing to the table, so that all goes into the capsule and on the back of the Cloud9 fans. We did get some input from the fans, actually, too, when it comes to what we're throwing in the capsule. Tweet here from and Reckless Simp.
Love it.
Says, LCS put some honey to support them bees. Honey never expires, poggers, which I didn't actually know that. I learned something new today.
Yeah,
I didn't know that either.
But as a person
that
who's
one.
been like, why do you guys hate bees several times on this cast, I approve.
We approve of the bees here. We do have another tweet that was contributed by our fans as well. This one coming from Blossom. A McDonald's Happy Meal to honor our boys. That does expire.
Still not sure about that, actually.
Yeah, I was going to make a really terrible joke about it.
Wait a second. If it doesn't expire, what are you putting in these Happy Meals, Mark?
I mean, that's exactly my point.
I mean, they can look real different at the end of the day.
Meat?
Oh, no.
I mean, by the time we actually open the capsule up again, it might not look like a Happy Meal. That'll be the real experiment that we're all in for. We're going to go ahead and take a quick breather, but when we return, we've got more LCS Countdown. Hello and welcome back to LCS Countdown. With our time capsule tucked away until summertime, I want to take a look at our schedule for the day. We're going to be starting off our matches with Golden Guardians taking on 100 Thieves, followed by Dignitas facing off against Evil Geniuses. TSM and C9 will battle on the Rift right after, before we close out the day with TL versus CLG and FlyQuest versus Immortals. But for more on that banger between TSM and Cloud9, let's check in with our casters, Freak and Azale.
Thank you very much, Gabby. Yeah, it's going to be exciting here. We've got a banger, as you mentioned, I think rightly put here, especially when you focus on the mid lane matchup between these teams. Power of Evil versus Perks is sure to be a fireworks show.
Yeah, it should be really, really exciting. These guys are two of the three that most people have ranked at the top of the table for mid laners, them alongside Jensen. We already got to see Perks versus Jensen yesterday, and Perks did not perform as well as some people were expecting. Perks has been getting better and better throughout his time in the LCS. You look to Lock-In all the way up till now. He's been getting solo kills and 1v1s, playing really aggressive, and it feels like he is finally coming into his own here in the LCS, playing like the player that was expected. And then Power of Evil on the other side of the table, I would say one of the most consistent mid laners over the last couple of years here in the LCS, helping to lead FlyQuest towards back-to-back finals, playing really well here on TSM. And it's interesting matchup because they have two pretty different styles, right? You have Perks, who has been going more towards these aggressive picks, the LeBlanc, the Aurelia, looking to really attack you in lane, create advantages there, where PoE has been moving and trending more towards, these control mages and the Victor and playing for the late game and more about that scaling style. So it will be interesting to see them two clash and really find out who's going to come out on top.
It'll be fun, and of course this game matters a lot for standings here as well. When you think about the fact that Cloud9 had that rough game yesterday, like they're looking to rebound.
Exactly. I mean, they've got to bounce back from that. They want to maintain their first seed, of course, and TSM, it's a very important win for them because there's so many teams tied around that 9-8 win mark, and they want to make sure that they are securing their upper bracket berth.
All right, well, it's going to be a fun one. It's going to be certainly a new chapter, another chapter in the heavy tome of League history, and that's going to be soon. But ahead of Game 1, let's get to know Golden Guardians newbie.
Creo que mínimo más de 2 veces he pensado en retirarme. No siempre cuando estás desmotivado puedes encontrar la salida o puedes encontrar la motivación tan fácil. En verdad, para un competidor perder te duele el alma. Si en verdad valía la pena. ¿Y ahora cuál es la meta? ¿Mundial? siempre miraba el Mundial como algo muy emocionante porque te cruzabas con los mejores jugadores del mundo prácticamente. Y siempre tuve como ese sueño de ir al Mundial porque es como un desafío muy grande. Creo que es el sueño para muchos latinoamericanos que fanean tanto a los equipos acá. Todo lo que teníamos que hacer para clasificar al Mundial era ganar un split de clausura. Nosotros terminamos segundo ese año y el siguiente año quedamos tercer puesto en el apertura y en el clausura. Y ahí fue cuando entré a All Knights, que en verdad fue un equipo bastante bueno para mí. Pero obviamente se falló en ese momento de jugar la final contra Isurus, que era por el pase al mundial. Trabajaste todo el split para ese pase al mundial y perder y tener que volver a intentarlo todo de nuevo el próximo año. Estaba muy desmotivado también. Estaba a punto de retirarme, no sabía qué hacer. Me sentía cansado con eso. En mis peores momentos de mi carrera, cuando estaba perdiendo la motivación de si en verdad quería seguir haciendo esto, quería seguir jugando. Por eso siempre pienso que es muy importante estar descansando, descansar. Cuando tengo tiempo libre siempre puedo pensar más de mi pasado. Y eso como que me da más motivación. De dónde venís, para dónde vas. Siento que es muy importante para no perder la vista en la meta. Siempre pensé en mi carrera que obviamente perder es parte del proceso. La competición es así. Intentás sacar lo positivo de eso, intentás aprender, intentás crecer. Si bien he perdido mucho en mi carrera, también he ganado mucho. Siempre intento sacar lo mejor de las derrotas. Y nada, cuando llegó la propuesta de Golden Guardians, para mí me abrió muchas puertas en el sentido de no soy nadie acá, entonces es un desafío muy grande jugar acá contra los mejores jugadores. Me gustaría poder ganar y estar entre los mejores support. Todavía mi meta sigue siendo ir a un mundial, dejar como mi huella y representar bien a Latinoamérica. Tengo muchos fans y mucha gente me apoya por el hecho de que estoy acá, de que se logró salir de Latinoamérica y estar compitiendo afuera, es un gran logro. Entonces necesito que todos estén orgullosos de mí y estar haciendo las cosas bien acá.
We just saw a clip from Golden Guardians Prospect Series. Always awesome to learn more about the players and their stories. If you want to check out the full episode, head over to youtube.com/Golden Guardians. But before you do, we've got a Golden Guardians game right here, baby. And the last time GG took on 100 Thieves, they came away with the win.
Yeah, I think people need to remember that this is the game that was super, super long with the Blaze Olive on Tristana, and everyone was, kind of talking about that. The most about this game was the fact that, like, oh my god, the Golden Guardians could have closed out faster. They had huge gold leads. This Tristana could have played more aggressively. But they still did pick up that win, and it was a pretty big upset. That was basically 10th place team taking down fourth, third best team at that point in the split. So it was a pretty impressive showing out of Golden Guardians.
Yeah,
I think that... Go ahead, Emily.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think one of the things that 100 Thieves have gotten a lot of criticism for is this whole Damonte Ryoma swap. And one thing I did want to bring up using 100 Thieves as an example, this isn't actually me criticizing them, by the way, because when you go into a new meta and you feel like you can't adjust to it, their response to play someone who plays mid lane more as like a control point that radiates outwards instead of someone who roams to side lanes. That's not a bad response. I'm not disagreeing with it. But one thing I don't see a lot of North American teams do, and I just kind of want to use 100T as an example here, is I don't often see them, instead of going to be like, okay, we're now going to put, Damonte on control mages initially, right, was the experiment. They could have just been like, okay, now you're going to play maybe something that fits better, like I don't know, mid lane Scion or mid lane Rumble, or just look at whatever Doinby is playing over in LPL. Like, I think a lot of the best LPL and LCK and LEC teams, what they sometimes do is just double down. So, and I'm not saying you don't change something, but you basically change it to fit how your players are or what your players really like to do. And again, this isn't me like flaming 100T for bringing in Ryoma. I don't think Ryoma is responsible for their losses. I think it's a perfectly good response to what you want to do. But in the future, I would really like to see North American teams kind of experiment with, you know, just being like, okay, now we're going to find you different picks that also suit this meta, but suit our play style additionally.
100% agree, Emily. I think just because the meta shifts doesn't mean you need to completely shift with it. I think 100 Thieves had a really clear identity, right? We had really strong side lanes in Someday and FBI and Huhi. We had Demonte, who would play side lane roaming champions who would manage to get them ahead. They had really good objective control, with Closer having the highest first dragon percentage in the league, and I don't like that they've thrown that away. If they want to try Ryoma, that's fine, but in my personal opinion, this is not the time in the split to completely change your team identity. Are you going to be better at playing meta than TL or C9? Probably not. So for all means, you know, try the Ryoma experiment, but at some point, I'd actually like to see Demonte back in. I'd like to see him on picks that suit his style and suit his strengths, even if they're not meta. And I'd like to see this team become the early game dominant team that they've been most of the split.
I think that's a very important distinction. The fact that you are all not criticizing Ryoma versus Demonte. It's what they provide for the team and the overall identity for 100 Thieves. But before we load on to the Rift, I want to see your predictions, what our analysts think are going to go down today with all our matches. Boom. Oh, no, there is a difference.
Okay.
Oh,
I've only ever
all right.
Mark.
Oh, yeah, okay. There we go. Mark is different.
Yeah, Mark, you got EG.
I think it was a fairly tough day. I think the FlyQuest Immortals game, I'm surprised to see, you know, similar opinions across there. EG Dig, I think, is pretty close, actually. Both teams have relied on objective control and team fighting around that a lot for how they actually win their games. And both teams have had big throws around those same objectives, too. So I think that's one of those games where I'm like, honestly, it could go either way. I wouldn't be that surprised. I'm just feeling EG right now.
All right, well, eventually we'll find out who on the desk got those predictions right. For now, let's go ahead and send things over to Freak and Azael for game number 1.